나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. How are you today? I hope this finds you well and secure. My mind, I'm still competing. Maybe I'll do both. I've been reading, I know again, this translation of a writing of Nichiren's. Sorry. Bit of a runny nose this morning. And this is a teaching that was written evidently, clearly, by its exhortation to secrecy to his inner circle, his trusted teaching staff, if you will. And so he's elaborating on some concepts, quoting previous texts and texts about the Lotus Sutra and previous teachings and all teachings. And they're pretty in-depth. I'm not afraid of sharing that stuff with you, other than it is generally the whole thing pretty doctrinal. So a lot of you have expressed less of a desire to dig into the things at that depth. But there are things to expunge from it that I think are handy little thought experiments to, again, condition our practice correctly and not let ourselves wander off. And then there's a translation of a Gosho in here on attaining Buddhahood in one's lifetime. Buddha immediately. And I think in the Gosho that videos that I've done, I've covered that one, but I don't think I covered this translation. And for some reason, this translation hit me differently. And maybe it's because I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about this what you might call internal transmission document. But, and it's a big one. But I'm going to select a specific couple of paragraphs here. Because I think this derives... We've heard this discussion, if you're a fan of movies, and especially Asian-inspired movies, martial arts, but not necessarily martial arts, but anywhere where we hear about these earth, wind, fire, I'll talk about the heavens, which actually for us, we should understand that means space-time, time-space being the same thing. And these references to what we're made of, right? The fundamental elements, if you will. Earth, water, wind, fire. Sometimes the fifth one being the space, time, heavens, whatever. And in this document, Nichiren uses that device as well. And it inspired some thoughts from reading through this thing. So rather than slogging through the whole thing, I'll reference the couple of paragraphs that I think are essential to this thought. And then I want to give you an interpretation that I think if you study this think about this, in other words, when we next do the Buddhahood or Buddha mind, Buddha instantiation of Buddha, and the meaning of Myoho Renge Kyo in this next Gosho, this will set the stage so you really understand what he's getting at in the Gosho. Does that make sense? Anyway, let me get right to it, because I may be able to cover this in a short enough amount of time that we can actually start, if not do, that entire Gosho. It probably is a two-parter. So, this is from, let me tell you what teaching this is. This is from a doctrinal document. Like I said, it's a long one. In it, the teaching approved by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods, written by Nichiren. Okay, and it's a voluminous document. I have a copy of this document on my Dropbox. I have a Dropbox folder that I can share with you if you really want to read the whole document. So how about that? If you've already gotten things from my Dropbox, this is a separate folder. So email me at tlksylvain@gmail.com and let me know. If you're not sure, send me your email address that you want me to send this Dropbox notice to. And I will add you to those who can access this Dropbox. I think it's called the Nichiren Texts, the folder. And that doesn't matter unless you have access to it, because you won't see it. But I think I may do this with, as I run into these doctrinal essays, I'll try to transfer them into PDF form and put them in this folder for those of you who are interested in a deep dive into these kind of things. I think that makes more sense than trying to read through the whole thing on this public forum here of YouTube. Let me know your thoughts. That's what the comments are for. Anyway, yeah, the teaching approved by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods. And way back in this, just to set the stage, he's been discussing the 5 periods, the 4 types of teachings. These are all, there's a lot of numbers in Buddhism, but there's divisions of, just like going, to school. You have different grades and you have Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and so on and so forth, right? So the same thing in Buddhism. There's a scholarship to it, and he explains how Shakyamuni Buddha, in his teaching life, spent the first 42 years expounding these 3 different or 4 different modalities, and in the final 8 years of his life, expounded the Lotus Sutra. He divides the earlier teachings, pre-Lotus Sutra, as you've heard before, provisional, expedient means. Basically, the terminology he uses here are teachings for the teaching of others, whereas the Lotus Sutra is self-practice. So this is Shakyamuni teaching how his own enlightenment took place, and he teaches it as a modality for us to become self-actualizing, self-practitioners. So he's not teaching at us or for us in our capacity. He's, in the Lotus Sutra, assuming you've got the basis of knowledge to perceive this. This is how you do it. I did it. Self-practice, okay? So this is the division that he breaks down quite granularly. And we come to this later in the document, although it's very close to the end. Oh, that's an interesting note. The teaching approved by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods. Jacqueline Stone puts a note in here, a long note. The Japanese title of this piece, Sanzen Shobutsu Sokanmon Kyosho Hairu, resist direct rendering into a manageable English phrase, and the English title given above represents a gloss rather than a literal translation. The word kyoso, or doctrinal characteristics, here refers to those doctrinal features used when organizing sutras into some overall scheme. Such schemes, called kyoso hainjaku, or comparative classifications of teachings, and on and on. So the title isn't really, in English, indicative of the depth of the content. So she's making a note on that. At any rate, thus, even if he should commit wrongdoing, then he nevertheless perfects the Buddha way. Heaven, earth, or heaven being space-time, earth, water, fire, and wind are the tathagatas of the 5 kinds of wisdom. We talk often about Buddha wisdom. So he's classifying it here more granularly. They dwell within the body and mind of all living beings and do not depart from us even for a moment. So this is a very important statement, because as you should know by now, especially if you've been going through the Gosho, I know that's a year's worth of videos in itself, if you do one a day, or the Lotus Sutra videos, that whole playlist. Nichiren very much is of the original Enlightenment school, although he extends it and clarifies it in an immediacy that the Tendai, the previous 600 years of Tendai, have wavered back and forth on and been intruded on by, like, Pure Land and others who've really messed it up or turned it into... Anyway, there's subtle variations from Chi'i's time all the way to Nichiren. And Nichiren does a major reclassification of the original teaching. And because it's a different time period of human beings, Nichiren, breaks down how what Chi'i was seeing and not directing in his time period was the immediacy of that very thing. So he clarifies and hones this original enlightenment. But the basis of it is that you and I and all phenomena are of the same stuff. And this same stuff includes our Buddha mind, our Buddha-ness, our Buddha source. And that all of this machinations of assemblages of different forms that we experience, that we label samsara, is this overlay of perceptions that obfuscates or gets in the way of our essential Buddhahood behind all of these veils. And so that by invoking that Buddha mind, which is always there, we can see through all of these veils of misunderstanding and then get that we are Buddha, albeit in this transitory state, this state of samsara. So it takes effort to then re-envision and understand samsara and this samsaric life as Buddha nature, because we're constantly barraged by the enticements, the seduction of things. But if we can see all of those things as fundamentally Buddha, then we can navigate thingness, thingifying, right, one another as ultimately egalitarian, equal. We do this, even non-Buddhists do this, right? Remember the song Woodstock? You know, we are stardust, we are golden. The idea being that the differences we see amongst everything is provisional. It's part of our, it's kind of like a dream. Not a literal dream, but a dream in that it's all fabrication. It's constructed. Fundamentally, there's very little difference, and really fundamentally, all the same, right? This is the oneness that's often misunderstood when people casually throw around, the oneness of Buddhism. It's a very profound thing to really capture, and so texts like this help us to dissect that. So, where did I leave? Thus, secular religious matters are united in the mind, and apart from the mind, there is no separate dharma whatsoever. See, again, that's a very profound thing, is to say that this entire constructed world that realms that we experience in samsara are experienced solely through the mind. They don't exist in and of themselves. They're just temporary instantiations of formations. And because we attach ourselves, we identify ourselves with everything, in our minds, our earthly minds, we make them permanent, at least temporarily permanent, right? If I could say that. But if we could see past that to a fundamental truth, our attachments and therefore our stress and our anxieties about stuff diminishes. It doesn't go away. We're still in samsara. We're still here on earth as humans, but with a very transparent understanding of this experience. Does that make sense? Therefore, when one hears this principle, there will be no obstacle to attaining the fruit of Buddhahood immediately where he stands. This is the ultimate principle. So, just off of that, I wanted to share with you an insight of my own to try to make this more relatable to our experience. The elements he talked about. Fire. Fire is not the mind, but the mind is consummation and radiation of the fire, the heat of the fire, the radiance of the fire. Make sense? We have a quick language here that was very understandable to the people of the time, but when we hear these ancient thoughts of earth, wind, fire, and water being the fundamental elements, we can, we do a lot of things with earth, we do a lot of things with water. That's not the significant meaning. The significant meaning, as Nichiren repeats several times here, is it's all of the mind. So yes, there's earth, water, fire, wind, and space-time, but those exist by virtue of our ability to perceive them. Don't ever forget that it's the mind at work here. This is what Nichiren and Shakyamuni was trying to get us to see all the time. The wind is not the mind, but the mind is a constant moment-to-moment perception of space-time. There can be no wind if there's no space-time, right? Earth is not the mind. You might be tempted to say, well, earth is a solid thing and we're made of solid things, but the mind, as I've said before, is an emergent property. Our bodies, which is where you usually stop with these analogies of earth, wind, water. Yeah, we're 80% water, we're 70% water, we're made of earth, we are stardust, right? We get all of that because that's samsaric. It's poetic, but it's still samsaric. Again, The object of thought here is the mind. So fire is not the mind, but the mind has the emergent properties of fire in its heat, its radiance. It has the emergent properties of the wind because it moves through time and space. Earth is not the mind. The mind is the ground of samsara and phenomenal things. All phenomena is the ground of our mind, of our what it emerges from, right? The ground of samsara. Water is not the mind, but the water is a collecting thing. It collects all of the attributes into a vastness, like the analogy all the time of streams, rivers leading into ocean, right? And space is not the mind either. Mind is the Buddha perception of the whole as one homogeneous experience in space-time. This is why the Buddha mind is all-knowing, all-seeing, all-hearing, because it is the fundament on which everything is built. And where is it built? In that emergent property that is the mind. So there's an equation here between Buddha and mind. And in many ways, you could say that Buddha equals mind, mind equals Buddha. And as you've heard me say before in previous videos, when we expire, whatever word you want to use, pass away, die, stop working, that's probably most accurate. What we are is the apparatus has stopped working, has stopped manifesting. It completely decays and goes away. Well, if the apparatus dies, stops working, decays, and goes away, then there can emerge no mind. And where there is no mind, there is no Buddha. Because Buddha is this experience. Only in samsara do we have the emergent quality of mind that can perceive accurately what this whole drama is. So, ipso facto, Buddhism is Buddha is something you experience in this life. There is no other. All right. I think I've made my point. I've made that point many, many times. But there it is again in doctrinal language, right? So with that, we can start becoming a Buddha in one life, which is kind of a misnomer because we're not becoming anything. If anything, we're unbecoming. We're transcending the becoming, because becoming is a function of thingifying. It's a samsaric thing to become. But within samsara, I suppose you could say, we can become Buddha. But the misleading language of that, English, would have us believe that Buddha is something we discover, some new thing, something from outside of us, or somewhere around us. But it is not. This is why the term awakening is far more indicative of what it is we're doing. We're not becoming Buddha, we're awakening Buddha. It's there. It's there in everything, everywhere, all the time, moment to moment. We're just obfuscating with this landscape, this contrived, constructed, thingifying, samsaric perception. And if dream doesn't work for you, that's fine. It doesn't work well for me either. Because we're so conditioned in our age that dreams are not real. And in fact, our experience of samsara seems quite real. So it's another layer of deeper understanding, transcending this, what we think of as real, as understanding that it is like as Shakyamuni said, and Tendai and other scholars. It is like a dream. Not a dream, but like a dream, in that it is not actual substance. It is ephemeral, emptiness. It's something that we experience with our minds in a duration cycle. But it too is decaying as we look at it. It does not exist in and of itself. There is no molecule called this painting, or particle, or whatever, chemistry, biology, whatever. Even this is a very temporary thing. She starts out, now if you wish to put an end to beginningless birth and death, and this time round, attain unexcelled Bodhi without fail, you must observe the wonderful principle originally inherent in living beings. Quote, the wonderful principle originally inherent in living beings, end quote, is Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, you can accept that on its surface at the moment, but he's going to dissect it for you. Therefore, when one chants Myoho Renge Kyo, that is observing the wonderful principle originally inherent in living beings, because Myoho Renge Kyo is the king of sutras, true and correct in text and principle. Its words and letters are themselves the true aspects. Again, he's wrestling with this transcendence of, yeah, you're reading words and you're saying words and you're using your skandhas and your eyes and your ears and your flesh and your sound. These are all samsaric things. But understand, by that invocation, your mind is experiencing all of this from a different point of view, a different perspective. This is the awakening, like somebody shaking you in your bed. Follow? That is, that which expounds and reveals the meaning of the one mind being the Dharma realm is called the wonderful Dharma. Therefore, this sutra is called the wisdom of the Buddhas. The one mind being the Dharma realm means that both land and person, body and mind, of all beings of the 10 realms and of the 3,000 realms, now we've talked about that a lot, so hopefully you can refer to what we've already talked about, as well as in sentient beings, including grasses and trees, the sky and earth, not excepting even a particle of dust, are encompassed in the mind in a single thought moment. Remember, birth, each and every moment. From the beginning of your daimoku to the end, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, you can envision 180,000 moments have occurred. And each of those moments are being transmuted by the Buddha mind as we chant. And this mind, in a single thought moment, permeates the Dharma realm. This is called the 10,000 Dharmas. So he's explaining the language of Buddhism. When one awakens to this principle, that everything is the Dharma realm, that is called the one mind being the Dharma realm. However, even if you chant and uphold Myoho Renge Kyo, if you think the Dharma is apart from your own mind, like it's something you have to achieve or gain from somewhere outside of your own mind, it's going to come to me, right? That kind of thing. That is not the wonderful Dharma, but some inferior Dharma. And this is why you've heard me rail against these other thoughts, these other words of like faith or prayer. These are words in the West, at least, that indicate receiving some other thing, getting imbued with a wisdom that we don't have. This is absolutely incorrect. And Nichiren talks a lot about this kind of thing. When he says, and he speaks in that dissertation that I was referring to earlier, that as Buddhists, when we reproach other schools, other sects, other practices, they're all Buddha. They're all teachings of the Buddha, like the Hinayana and so on and so forth. I'm sorry, should have turned this off. It seems to be the robocall heaven this morning. Just won't stop. Okay, evidently I need car insurance or something, or what is it, warranty? Whatever, it's crazy. All right, sorry about that. If you think the Dharma is apart from your own mind, that is not the wonderful Dharma, but some inferior Dharma. So what I was saying is, even we know Nichiren is one who railed against these other schools of Buddhism, but he corrects that thinking in that earlier dissertation, saying that what we do is we rail against the incompleteness of those teachings. They're incomplete, and therefore practicing them now in this age and time is wholly inappropriate. It won't get us anywhere. We're just going to burn ourselves out. It'll create doubt because we won't succeed. There is only one way to succeed in this time, and that is the direct experience of our Buddha nature. If it is some inferior Dharma, it is not the present sutra, and if it is not the present sutra, it is an expedient means, a provisional doctrine. Do you see? It's a preparatory thing. So don't rely on that to attain your Buddhahood. You never will. And if it is a teaching of expedient means or provisional doctrines, then it is not the direct path of attaining Buddhahood. And if it is not the direct path of attaining Buddhahood, then one cannot become a Buddha, even if one should practice austerities over the course of many lifetimes and long kalpas. Austerities being a practice that you're just doing out of rote habit in order to achieve something you believe isn't already extant within you. See, this is the crux of the problem. Becoming a Buddha in one lifetime would then be impossible. Therefore, when you chant the wonderful Dharma and recite the Lotus Sutra, you should arouse deep conviction that Myoho Renge Kyo is referring to your own mind at each thought moment. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. How many thought moments have gone on there? One should never think of all the 80,000 sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime, nor the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 time periods and 10 directions as existing apart from one's mind, your mind. It is because people make this error that although they study Buddhism, they fail to observe the mind nature and thus can never separate themselves from birth and death. In other words, stress, anxiety, doubt, so on. If you seek the way apart from the mind, then even if you perform all manner of practices and good deeds, you will be like a poor man, although he calculates his neighbor's wealth every day and night, does not gain so much as half a cent thereby. That's a quote from another sutra, right? Thus we read in Tendai's commentary that, quote, if one fails to observe the mind, one's heavy obstacles will not be eradicated, end quote. A judgment that if one fails to observe the mind, one's Buddhist practice will become an endless, painful austerity. We don't want that. Thus, people like this have been shamed as those who study the Buddha Dharma only to become followers of heterodox ways, various schools. As the Chikwan states, quote, although they study the Buddhist teachings, they in fact become identical to those who hold external views. They're treating it as some religious practice. They're not awakening their already extant mind because they're not thinking that way. This being the case, whether one chants the Buddha's name, reads from the Amida, reads from the sutra scrolls, scatters flowers, or even lights incense, in every case, the merit and good roots formed by such acts is inherent in one's thought moment. You should take confidence in this. In this regard, the Chi Ming Ching, the Vimalakirti Sutra, makes clear that if one seeks the liberation of the Buddhas in the mental functions of the beings are none other than Bodhi, and birth and death are none other than nirvana. We also read that that when the mind of the beings are defiled, the land is also defiled. But when their minds are pure, the land is also pure. What does that mean? Attitude and intent. If your attitudes and intent aren't based clearly on instantiating your Buddha mind that's already here, let's look at it. If your mind isn't focused there, then what you perceive will be tainted. And a tainted mind sees a tainted world. How many people today have adopted a life of misery as their fate, their destiny? Their can't change this. This is I'll just pray, or I'll do these rituals, or I'll just tolerate, and that'll achieve some kind of what? Some gold star of patience and tolerance. What a miserable life. So this is when we talk about the land of tranquil light, or the Buddha land, we're talking about our own mind and life experience in the same place, but with the knowledge, with the wisdom, with the eye, with the experience of Buddha-ness. That's what it is to become a Buddha right now. That's why we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thus we find that whether we speak of a pure land or whether we speak of an impure land, these are not two separate lands. The distinction depends solely on the good and evil of our minds. Good and evil, questionable translation. But you understand? The same holds true whether we speak of the beings or of the Buddha. While deluded, one is called an ordinary worldling, and when awakened, one is called a Buddha. Same thing, it's just a different perspective, a different thought moment. To illustrate, even when a tarnished mirror, when polished, will appear like a jewel, the mind which right now is deluded by the ignorance of the thought moment is a tarnished mirror. But if one polishes it, it will surely become the bright mirror that it is. That is the true suchness of the Dharma nature. Arouse confidence deeply, resolve, and day and night, morning and evening, polish the mirror of the mind without neglect. This is why we practice morning and evening Gangyo, right? How should you polish it? Simply chanting Namo Myoho Renge Kyo is what is called polishing. I don't want to make these too long. So that'll be the end of part 1. And tomorrow we'll start on part 2. I think this is a really fundamental teaching. If you want to understand Buddhism in general, and specifically Nichiren thought, it's here. Just study this one Gosho. Reread it. Right? Take it with you to Butsudan. And as your mind finds different words, sentences, ideas in here, curious, needing more for your own elucidation, that's good. That's your Buddha mind leading you toward the insights that you need in order to move karma, move veils, illusions out of the way. The ones that you adhere to most are the ones that are going to call questions into your mind. That's good. Go answer them. Read other Go shows. Go use this channel and use the search bar in this channel, not the YouTube one, and put in a key term right from the Go show. If you read external views or tarnished mirror, put that in there and see the results that come up. They'll be all over the place, but they will in some way reference those terms, whether in the title or in the description and the thing. That's why I try to put one or two sentences of description that are inclusive of the concepts in the video. I can't succeed with every single parameter that somebody might have, but it will help you hone in on things that you might want to watch or listen to. You'll learn something. Something will be touched off, right? Because your Buddha mind is leading you. Use the threefoldlotus.com site as well, especially the core study materials page. It keeps growing and keep adding to it with some limitations. Like I said, sometimes the documents I want to put up there, unless I pay inordinate amounts of fees, which I can't afford, the website won't allow me to upload, so I put them on Dropbox for you. But that's okay. All the basic stuff is there for sure. And keep your practice strong. I'm incredibly proud of you guys. This practice always opens up areas of question for us, which is the nature of dispelling our karma. I almost said negative karma. It's negative because it gets in the way of our Buddhahood. That's why it's negative, not because it's bad, right? Karma's not bad or good. It's the formations that we're of. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you again for your support. It's amazing. You support by watching, of course. Please like and subscribe, share if it's appropriate. Download the audio podcast. We just got a new contributor. Thank you so much. And I'll just continue to try to do more and more and expand this channel and our capabilities, and you guys make that happen. So thank you all for your practice and your patronage. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Take care, and be kind to yourself and everybody else. And I'll see you in the next one.